Today's teardown is on an engine that I get a ton of requests for, and I haven't done one on the channel. Now, I've done some 6.1 Hemis on this channel, but I get a lot of requests for 5.7s, and it's typically a rule of mine that I don't buy 5.7 liter cores. And it's not that I don't see them, like there's some amazing engine. A lot of people think that because I don't have a teardown on the channel on that particular engine, that they're great engines, and that's just not the case. It's because I don't sell parts off of them, which is why I don't go after 5.7 liter cores. Sometimes I can sell an intake manifold, an accessory bracket, an oil pan here and there, and maybe a good head for a little bit, but the margins just aren't there, which is why I don't go after 5.7s. Now 6.1s, as many as I can get my hands on, which is not enough, and then 6.4s in my dreams, maybe someday. But we're going to take apart this 5.7. It's out of what I think an 08 Chrysler 300C. It's got a bunch of writing on it. It's definitely come from a yard. It's got heat tabs on it, which gives me a clue as to what's wrong with it. I have no crank bolts, so I can't even turn it over. It's missing the spark plugs, or at least most of them. Oh, this is a mess. But we're going to take it all apart and figure out what went wrong. This is going to be an incredibly shameless plug. If you need a 5.7 liter Hemi engine, as long as it's 2013 and earlier, I probably have it. I have them in Grand Cherokees, I have them in Commanders, I have them in Chargers, Magnums, 300s, I have the 05 1 year only, I have 6 to 8, I have 9 to 13. Just let me know what you need. Send me an email. I'm going to leave your email in the video description. And before we go too far into this video, I paid money for this engine that I don't anticipate getting back. I did this for the video. I did it for the video. I think it's worth it. At least I hope. So, another first for the channel. Here is a heat tab that salvage yards often glue onto engines to verify if an engine's been overheated, like it's been installed incorrectly, or someone ran it without coolant or low on coolant. And this one is a little melty, but it's not too bad. It looks all right. However, this one is all the way melted, which means this engine got hot. I wonder how bad the inside looks. Another thing I noticed is the overzealous amount of RTV holding the thermostat housing on. Now, I've been through this on the channel. You don't need to put that much RTV on. You just save some for somebody else. It's not going to make it any better. I understand that you don't want to go back and fix a leak, but there is a proper amount, there's not enough, and then there's this, which is clearly too much. Also, I don't know if you guys knew this, but if you have a bad O-ring or anything like that, you can just put some RTV on it. That's the same thing, really. I mean, it's rubber, right? Gee, I wonder why this overheated. Look at this. Moving on up. So we can check a few things, and we're going to see if it's drained. Yeah, right. You guys are all laughing at me. I'm sure it's drained. Oh, that was really tight. So clearly, okay. Okay, that was a lot looser a second ago. All of that, I bet it's not drained. Nope. That's the wrong color. More of that 0W0 stuff. That's what they put in the Viper, and that's why it blew up. You know, all of a sudden, I don't really want chocolate milk. Something else worth mentioning, I'm pretty sure coolant does not run through the intake manifold, yet for some reason they used heater pipe, heater hose, as crankcase ventilation. Don't do that. That's not right. All right, next we're going to pull the intake manifold. That ought to do it. Of course, the one that looked loose, not all the way. Well, it looks like 5 Mouskowitz lived in here, but the rest of this, let's get a flashlight before we say anything that we have to take back. Oh, this one looks okay. That one looks okay. Also all right. It doesn't even look like there's any standing water in here, but that's good. Let's go to the other head. Well, that one looks okay as well. God, for as much water as came out of the crankcase, I'm surprised there's no water in the... What is that? Uh-oh. Well, huh. That's not good. That is the valve seat. It's supposed to be in the head. It's not in the head. It's kind of in the head. I think I know what we're going to find. I'm going to go ahead and get this exhaust manifold out of the way. Now I'll just peel the valve cover off. Ooh, that needs a shower. Clearly, this is a very well taken care of engine. Being sarcasm, folks. This is gross. This is probably the dirtiest I've seen one of these Hemis in a long time. A very long time. Let's get this coolant pipe out of the way. This is probably what killed this engine. All that, oh, nope. RTV. Almost got me there. That's good enough. Let's go ahead and crack these rockers loose. Pull the valve train out, and we'll get the heads off. Whoa. Ah. This is normal. This is Peyronie's disease. Normal, not normal. And that one's bent. And that one's bent. This is great. Well, somehow we have 3 bent intake push rods. One of the intake push rods is fine, and all of the exhausts are fine. I did not expect to find bent push rods on this side of the engine. Now let's get the passenger valve cover off. I don't know how, but that's dirtier. All right, let's crack some rockers loose. That one's a little bent. Fix that one. That's a really bent push rod. Okay, now for the intake side. Bent. 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 See, these all match. As long as they match, that's all that matters. Let's get these upper head bolts out. Crack these head bolts loose. Wow, that was tight. What? Okay, now it's loose. Oh, it smells so bad. I wish you could smell this, guys. Okay. One head coming right off. Well, it certainly has its share of water in there. But that's not even the worst part. Ugh, I probably should just tip this thing over. Let's get this head gasket off. Don't cut me. Come on, head gasket. Well, that piston and chunks of metal embedded in the... Oh, there, I got some of it out. That's not good. You know, I know these were... They had like cylinder deactivation, but I guess they stuck with the non-adjustable rods. I don't know. It's pretty bad. There's what that front piston looks like. And that was not the one that we saw a problem with right away. And there's a mark from the valve seat. That head, Chris Hansen, that piston, told it to take a seat. And it did. That one did too. You can see outline right there of a seat, outline right there. These look relatively unscathed. Let's go take a look to see how bad this head looks. So that valve is bent. That valve is bent. There's a mark from it making contact with the piston. There's the one that dropped the seat. We could see it through the intake port. And then this one just deleted a seat. It's a seat delete. Lots of damage to that combustion chamber. That's really bad. Okay then. Good God, that was tight. Alright. I don't know why these are so tight. These are not usually this tight. Now remember, folks, this is the good side. I say that with a lot of hesitation. And try to turn me into Miles Davis. As it turns out, this actually is the good side. Mark on that piston, and that piston from the valve making contact, which we kind of assumed when we saw the bent push rods. There's only one way those bend. And then there's some rust. This engine clearly sat out in the rain. As you would expect, several bent valves. Not surprised. I haven't seen this level of damage all over the engine on a Hemi at this point. Now we start on the front of the engine, start zipping some bolts out. Seems like I might lose some fluid before I take this bolt out. So maybe I'm going to get something to catch it. Okay, last bolt. Nope. Yep, last bolt. Oh, yeah. Look at all that crusty stuff. Yum. Ugh. Like the LS, we're going to use a push rod. It worked great. I'm going to use the only straight intake push rod. I think that's probably why one of them was straight, so that I could use it to remove the crank pulley. Checks out, right? It bent it a little bit. Uh-oh. I played around and found out. Nope. Oh, this will come out of here, right? Yes, that's perfect. Next, I'm going to use a exhaust push rod. I use one off of the passenger bank because I know it's been heat treated. Oh, that's not going to work. Dang it. Guess I got to use the rod that came with the tool. It's all bent. And it's off. Now it's working on getting the rest of this front cover off. Oh, it sprayed me in the face. Coolant. Could have gone without that. Is that it? I think that's it. Every time I do this on one of these engines, I'm always wondering if I got all the bolts. Gonna give it a little tap. All right, let's see if we can't flip this thing over nice and gently. Oh, I'm missing. Like a glove. Start zipping this pan out. Pan's broken. Cool. This is very glued on. Oh boy. There's all kinds of pieces and junk in here. Not as sparkly as I'd expect. They definitely didn't want this one leaking. Stay. There's some of that junk in the pan. It's pretty gross looking. And then there's some pieces of things here. So I'm not quite sure what this is yet. It's definitely metal. Could that be bearings? I don't think that's bearings. I don't know. I don't even know what that looks like. But I bet we're gonna find out. And then the pickup, it's got some debris in it. A little RTV, small pieces, but nothing that would clog it. All right, let's get this pickup out of here. O-ring looks okay. Now on a Hemi, the windage tray is also the oil pan gasket. So we're gonna go ahead and pry that out of the way. Yep, we're gonna pry this out of the way. Lots of RTV this thing's been into before. Lots of RTV. Let's see if we can get this off now. I think we should be able to now that the windage tray is out. Oh, I hear loose stuff in there. Oh, that's not good. Uh-oh. Well, we just solved the mystery. Kind of. Let's get this oil pump out of the way first, and I'll show you what I found. Ah, it's just raining pieces. So all of those components were parts of the timing system. As you can see, there's a little bit of slack in there now. There's actually some slivers of metal jammed in the chain. Yeah, it's supposed to be a little tighter than that. Well, that would explain why there's so many bent push rods, because there was so much piston to valve contact. That's pretty impressive. Here's all the pieces of the timing tensioner, guide, lots of pieces. Just glancing at the cylinder head, I noticed something else. There's some non-uniform scratches, like someone did a single cheek head resurfacing. I bet this has been apart before. This looks like someone resurfaced the cylinder head. It's a quality job all over this engine. Let's see if we can get this oil pump apart. These are really shallow, so it might not work. It worked. It actually doesn't look too bad in here. Well, I take that back. So here's the inside of the pump. Here's the gears. See, there's some pretty hefty scratches and grooving, but the most alarming thing is, I don't know, part of the timing chain tensioner in here. I'd say that's bad. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably a 13. There's a big gouge in the housing right there. I think that probably all happened at the very end of this engine's life. Let's go ahead and get the cam gear off. Save that for later. Now, I'd like to see if I can turn the bottom end over. Let's try this. Not like that. Not literally. Okay, it does move. Rust in the cylinders is going to be a problem. I think we're going to try to get a few cylinders apart, a few rods and pistons out, and then we'll see if it turns over a little easier. We'll start with the rear 2 cylinders. Bearing looks okay. Bearing looks all right. Wow, it's pretty heavy wear on the skirt on that one. The rings are frozen here. Show you that in a minute. Something else worth mentioning, these are fractured rods, which means that when you break them loose, the metal has a rough texture between the cap and the rod. Most engines I take apart that way, unless most of the Japanese engines are not fractured. Most of the domestic stuff is fractured. But normally, before you crack the bolts loose, you can't see a line, whereas you can clearly see a line there and there. Not so much on these cylinders, but do you think someone's been in here? It really feels like someone's been in here putting some bearings in here. And if you look at the crank journal, there are some grooves, some gouges that I can feel with my fingernail that do not coincide with wear on the bearings. Huh. Yeah, there's pretty good wear on that crank journal compared to the bearing. It's all that rust. Get some penetrant for that cylinder. I don't even know if I'm moving it. Oh, it's moving. I don't know. It's got a date code like it's original. I don't know how to read this actually. It's a standard bearing. Okay, now with 3 out, let's see if this is any easier to turn over. It is. That's getting better. Just pretty much using the rings to cut through whatever rust is still there. Let's go ahead and get this. We're just going to work from back to front. Get all the rods and pistons out of it. Wow, it's still very tough to turn. So now I've run into a problem. I think I can do this. It's getting easier. Perfect. That wasn't what I wanted to happen. Well, that is very on there. Let's get this one off as well. Then maybe we'll use the crank to drive those to the top of the bore. Why do we need to do that? Okay, for some reason, that's not working. Let's get this one out of here. Now this one is very much not moving. It's the most stuck one. Of course, it's the last one I do. It's moving-ish. Oh, we still got a long ways to go. Oh, look at that. Crank moves nice and easy. Almost to the top of the bore. Oh, we're crowning. It's out. Pretty much all of these rods and pistons have some damage and wear. Whether the rings are rusted in place or whether they have marks from impact with a valve or excessive skirt wear, like that. It's really deep on that side. Bearings are also fairly worn. They're not grooved that bad, but definitely not perfect. And the rust and the water, that certainly doesn't help anything. There's the top of the piston. But the best piece here is this piston. This was that one cylinder. This is not from it falling out of the bore. This is from trying to ingest, it did ingest a seat. That seat is gone. That's from this cylinder right here. So that seat is gone, probably laying on top of the converter in multiple pieces. And that's from trying to compress it. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, I don't think these rods and pistons are worth anything. But it is worth noting, these rods are pretty beefy. Even for just a 5.7. With the rods and pistons out, this crank turns really nice. I bet these main bearings are going to look perfect. Get this oil filter off. That'll give us access to the main cap bolts. That one's actually drained. Oh, let's pull these main caps. I'm not sure perfect is the word I would use. Definitely not perfect. That one's really grooved up. So is that one. Very deep grooves. Probably all this damage happened in the last little while that this engine ran. The crank is serviceable, but it will definitely need some work at a machine shop. I don't really know if a 5.7 crank's worth it. 6.1 crank, definitely worth it. 5.7 cranks are pretty easy to find. Alright guys, we have very little left. We just got to pull the lifters and the cam out. Lifters all look really good. I'm sure they've never been replaced, ever. Ever. Never on a Hemi. That one is not so hot. These look okay. If anything, they're a little loose in the bore. Yeah, that one's got a little wear. All we've got left is the cam. Oh no. That was a little rough. Probably should figure out where the bolt for that cam went. Oh, I think I found it. The cam looked good at first glance, but if you look a little closer, you'll see that it's starting to pit. This is not a good cam. It's got some wear on the lobes. And this is what they do. These cams are notoriously bad. I don't know if it's the metal they used. I don't understand why. But I've pulled so many bad Hemi cams out. Pretty much every other 6.1 I get has a bad cam, whether that's why it's bad or not. It's got a bad cam. So the block looks okay on this side. It's got some rust stains. Probably a good idea to go over. Just judging by these vertical scratches here, I can feel that with my fingernail. That's going to take some machine work. Not as bad as I expected. The rust wasn't quite as bad as I've seen. This was the cylinder with all the carnage. Well, the majority of carnage, I should say. And it's got some pretty good pits along the top. It's going to take a lot of machine work to get that out. Deep groove on this side. I've seen worse, of course. That side's got some rust stains as well. I'm not quite sure if we're going to save this block or not. I don't know what a 5.7 block brings. May not be worth the machine work. Let's talk about some other cores I got in. Another M156. This one's out of an S63. I am really excited to take this one apart. It is more complete than the last, I think. Well, it's missing some of the cam stuff, solenoids on the front. The last one of these parted out so well. I am so happy that this is here. I also got a Core N54 in. A twin turbo 3-liter inline-six BMW engine. This is what's in my wagon. I think this one's out of a 2010 535. I think it was a returned engine. I'm not certain. I've also been asked to see some old iron on the channel, and I'm trying to deliver here. Here's a small block Chevy. A friend of mine just dropped this off today. Pretty much gave it to me, said, hey, this will make a great video, and, well, I think it will. And here is the latest acquisition. This is a 928, an 86.5 928 engine that suffered a minor external overheat situation. Okay, maybe not minor, it's pretty bad. This engine comes courtesy from PMP Auto Specialties, my buddy Pete out on the East Coast. He is a Subaru specialty yard. If you need anything Subaru, and you might ask, why would you ever have a 928 engine? Well, Pete is like I am. We own a lot of everything. Let's see, what did we get from this engine that we can sell? Well, we've got an oil pan. No, that's broken. The intake, no, also broken. Valve covers are broken. Heads are bad. The rods and pistons aren't worth anything. Pretty much the block and crank are kind of ish, but the timing cover, that's a solid $100 bill. So not all is lost. Most of these parts will end up in the scrap bin. We might see if the block is worth doing something with, same with the crank. But this is why I don't chase 5.7s, because had this been a 6.1, the margins are humongous. The block's worth a bunch of money no matter how much machine work it needs. The crank is the same story. The rods and pistons, any surviving 6.1 rods and pistons, those are worth money. And if the intake was a 6.1 intake, it would have been metal and likely not broken and likely gone, because that's usually what happens when I get 6.1 cores. I hope you enjoyed this teardown. There is a moral to this story. If you have any Chrysler 7, 2.7, 3.7, 4.7, or 5.7, or a 6.1 Hemi, or any engine really, if you get it hot, you risk dropping a seat. I'm not going to say that only Chryslers do this. I've seen plenty of rectangle port LS engines drop a seat when they get hot. Never seen a cathedral port do it. Not saying it's not possible. But if you get these engines hot, you risk dropping a seat. And let me tell you, I can count on one hand the number of drop seats I've seen where that engine was salvageable. It doesn't usually happen. It usually is a catastrophic failure, and it's usually cheaper to buy a running replacement engine. So if you need a 5.7 because yours dropped a seat, or ate a lifter because they do that too, hit me up. I'm going to have my email in the video description if you want to buy parts off of this engine. Whatever there is, I'm happy to sell it as well. And as always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.